Welcome to a journey into the heart of history, where forgotten stories linger in the shadows of time. Today, we'll uncover a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and discovery, hidden deep within the dense jungles of Papua New Guinea. Imagine walking along an overgrown trail, only to stumble upon a secret fiercely guarded for decades, a battlefield frozen in time, untouched since the chaos of World War II. What secrets does this lost site hold? And how did one man's determination lead to a discovery that would rewrite history? Let's step into the past and unravel the mystery together. He thought he was heading to Papua New Guinea for a typical exploration, but what he found was something far more terrifying and amazing than he could have ever imagined. This jungle secret, fiercely protected, was unearthed, and what was discovered was simply unbelievable. In the dense, verdant jungles of Papua New Guinea, an Australian trekker named Brian Freeman made a discovery that would rewrite a chapter of World War II history. As he navigated the Kokoda Trail, a 98-kilometer path etched into the Owen Stanley mountain ranges, Freeman unearthed remnants from a bygone era, hidden for nearly 70 years. The Kokoda Trail, a site of historical reverence, is annually traversed by Australians paying homage to their forebears who clashed with Japanese forces during the Pacific War. Yet the discovery Freeman made was unlike anything the trail had revealed before. Brian Freeman, a former Special Forces soldier and seasoned trekker, was no stranger to the Kokoda Trail. His frequent hikes had fostered deep connections with the local villagers, a bond built on mutual respect and understanding. Despite his familiarity with the trail, the existence of a clandestine battle site had eluded him until a villager from Alola shared a long-held secret. The villager disclosed that the true location of a significant battle was concealed up a hill, a secret preserved by the Alola community since 1942. In 2009, after years of cultivating trust with the villagers, Freeman was led to the site. Upon arrival, he described the experience as stepping into a living museum where the battlefield lay astonishingly preserved despite the encroaching jungle. This location, known as the Battle of Eora Creek, was a pivotal and bloody confrontation between Australian and Japanese forces during World War II. The significance of Freeman's discovery cannot be overstated. The battlefield, previously known only as the Lost Battlefield, had remained intact for 68 years, situated a kilometer west and 450 meters ahead of the village of Eora Creek. This find illuminated new aspects of the Kokoda Trail's history and the broader Australian campaign during the war. Hailed as the most significant World War II discovery of the 21st century, Freeman's find offered the potential for Australian and Japanese veteran services to begin identifying and repatriating dozens of lost soldiers. Freeman, who dedicated years to studying diaries and maps to locate the site, attributed his success to the strong relationship he had forged with the Alola people. On October 22, 1942, Australian and Japanese soldiers engaged in a ferocious battle that spanned 4 days and nights, resulting in the deaths of 69 Japanese and 79 Australian men. The site had been lost to history for decades, rendering Freeman's discovery invaluable. Upon reaching the area, Freeman initially hoped to find remnants of a makeshift Japanese hospital and relics such as guns and ammunition. However, he did not anticipate encountering the war dead. The scene was as if time had stood still, with ammunition scattered as it had been during the battle. Freeman likened the experience to walking onto a film set, expressing both excitement at the historical significance and emotional disturbance at seeing the remains of fallen soldiers. The team discovered the remains of a Japanese soldier against a tree, along with boots, ammunition shells, machine guns, and hand grenades. More boots, bones, helmets, and water bottles were found in the foliage, painting a haunting picture of the past. In interviews, Freeman described the emotional impact of seeing items dropped by soldiers who had lost their lives. The dead lay where they had fallen or been placed by comrades, giving the impression that the battle had just occurred. Australian General Peter Cosgrave, upon visiting the site, noted that metal detectors picked up rifles, ammunition, and helmets, illustrating the site as a significant Japanese defensive position. He observed the positions held by both sides, where they treated their wounded, and the Australian advance and casualties. Over the years, Army uniforms decomposed, but leather boots, belts, and gun holsters remained. The villagers were aware of the battlefield, passing it down as a secret through generations. Superstitions deterred them from disturbing the area, fearing the soldiers' ghosts would haunt the land. Freeman believed he was the first white person to enter the field since the 1942 battle. Freeman's discovery of the lost site of the Battle of Eora Creek, which began on October 22, 1942, and ended about a week later, highlighted the bravery of the Australian soldiers known as diggers. Part of the 16th Brigade, they trekked through the jungles along the Kokoda Trail. Japanese soldiers advancing to use the region for attacks on Australia held the high ground and gunned down the diggers with machine guns. Despite the disadvantage, the Australians fought valiantly. The plateau above Eora Creek served as a medical center for Japanese soldiers advancing on the Kokoda Track during the early Pacific War. The clash occurred months after the war erupted, with Japanese forces in an advance to the rear. Both sides suffered casualties, but the Japanese losses were greater. The battle halted the Japanese advance toward Port Moresby, marking a strategic victory for the Allies. Freeman distinguished between Australian and Japanese soldiers based on body positions and weaponry. Approximately 70 Australians were killed, with hundreds more wounded, but the diggers successfully drove the Japanese into retreat. They buried some Imperial Japanese soldiers in a mass grave, while many corpses remained where they fell. The site held immense significance, as it was the only battle location where the deceased soldiers and weapons had remained untouched since the conflict. Hidden under the jungle canopy, it stayed intact for nearly 7 decades. The Alola villagers, who often hunted nearby, discovered it and kept it secret out of respect for the spirits. Freeman speculated about a Japanese medical center in the area, though he found no concrete evidence. However, using diaries and battle maps, the team discovered kidney-shaped medical dishes at the battle site, suggesting a Japanese hospital had been set up there. Freeman recounted, "The first thing I saw was a Japanese soldier with his helmet on. We found the bones of 3 more Japanese soldiers. I never expected to find war dead. It's one thing to find weapons or artifacts, quite another to find soldiers who died fighting. I was a soldier for 20 years, and I was shocked at the sight." On their first trek, they hoped to find remnants of a makeshift Japanese hospital and relics of guns and ammunition. His priorities shifted upon finding the dead soldiers and preserved battle scene. He said, "Once we realized Japanese and potentially Australian soldiers were buried here, we discussed with the villagers the need for these men to be identified and returned home." Freeman's research led him to conclude there was once a Japanese medical facility in the jungle. He inspected old diaries and battle maps to learn about the battle in the area, speculating about a Japanese medical establishment. The location remained a mystery until he found it. Confirmation of his theory came with compelling evidence verifying a Japanese hospital existed in September 1942. More importantly, a Japanese soldier propped against a tree was discovered. Freeman found the remains of a Japanese soldier resting against a tree with his helmet still on. Other explorers found 3 more Japanese soldiers. Debates continue about the actual number of casualties and participants in the battle. Freeman and his team believed 79 Australian soldiers were killed and 145 wounded, while the Australian War Memorial website lists 99 dead and 192 injured. Large rectangular pits, called rifle pits, were also found, indicating a valuable Japanese defensive hold. Australian General Peter Cosgrave visited the site and reported, "Our metal detectors picked up ammunition and helmets of Australian and Japanese soldiers, illustrating this location as a significant Japanese defensive position." Freeman pondered the significance of this discovery. He located a battlefield, found hospital evidence, gathered war details, and estimated the soldiers involved. He stated, "Our priority is to identify and repatriate the fallen soldiers and honor their memory by ensuring all other elements remain intact and untouched." After 4 days and nights of fighting, Freeman estimated 69 Japanese and 79 Australian soldiers died in the battle. He said, "The bodies of 5 Australians and dozens of Japanese soldiers were never found and are listed as missing, presumed killed in action." He added, "We hope that we have found those fallen soldiers so they can be identified and returned to their families for appropriate burial." With more evidence and a clear goal, Freeman aimed to repatriate the bodies to the soldiers' families for the proper burial they deserved. Cosgrave noted that everything necessary to understand the battle was present at the site, including positions held, treatment areas for the wounded, and evidence of the Australian advance and casualties. Freeman, in an interview, described the battlefield as an eerie place where one can experience the battle directly, rather than it being a mere memorial. The Australian Defence Force planned to bury the Australian soldiers' bodies in Port Moresby, where the nearest Commonwealth War Graves Commission cemetery is located. Freeman mentioned collaboration with both the Australian and Japanese governments to repatriate the dead and preserve the site in its current condition. Brian Freeman authored a book titled The Lost Battlefield of Kokoda, detailing his discovery and the site's history. He continues to visit the site and has documented his findings. Archaeological digs have been conducted to identify the corpses, with Freeman expressing a desire to repatriate the bodies to Australia. The Japanese have yet to decide whether to repatriate their dead or build a memorial at Eora Creek. Freeman expressed gratitude for the trust of the Alola villagers and noted that many Australians are interested in visiting the battlefield, though it may take years to identify all remains. Writing the book was a cathartic experience for Freeman, who found it incredible that such an important battlefield had been forgotten. Recently, Freeman and his team faced opposition from landowners who formed the Kokoda Track Landowners Task Force. They launched a blockade to protest the management of the historical site, citing economic suppression and lack of promised benefits. The group criticized the PNG government for not providing $2 million owed to them and the lack of consultation and accountability regarding Australian government funding. They demanded better management and tracking of the Kokoda Initiative funds. The task force's press release highlighted the absence of public forums and detailed expenditure reporting from the PNG Conservation and Environment Protection Authority, CPA. The PNG government owed the landowners over $1.5 million, and the Australian government had pledged funding for the people and the site. The release, signed by 19 village landowners, included recommendations for management restructuring and funding investigation. James Enage, chairman of the task force, warned that the situation compromised the integrity of a significant World War II site. The blockade lasted 3 weeks and threatened the start of the trekking season, prompting the PNG government to meet the group's demands. Provincial Governor Robert Aroy urged the landowners to reopen the track for trekkers. Jerry Agu, CEO of the Papua New Guinea Tourism Promotion Authority, warned that the blockade could damage tourism and the site's reputation. Sue Fitcher, president of the Kokoda Tour Operators Association, noted that the embargo ended quickly and did not significantly disrupt tourism. However, she emphasized the need for confidence that the track would remain open to attract more Australian trekkers. It seems like all is well that ends well. After the issue had been resolved, there were no other complaints or issues regarding the site or the track. We are glad to have heard about this fantastic discovery that shed some light on a fascinating moment in history. Moreover, it must have been a comfort to the families of the deceased to finally have some form of closure. If you like this episode, hit that like button, share a link with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe.